Have you ever felt like your soul was being slowly drained by the flickering fluorescent lights of an office cubicle?
Have you ever stared at a mountain of spreadsheets and wondered if this was all life had to offer until your heart eventually just stopped?
Welcome to Story Panel Channel, where today we dive into a tale of ultimate cosmic compensation. Imagine trading your soul-crushing 9-to-5 for the power to level entire mountain ranges with a snap of your fingers. This is the story of a man who worked himself to the grave, only to find that the afterlife had a very different kind of career path waiting for him. This is I Died from Overwork and Woke Up with God-tier Magic. The air in the office was stagnant, smelling of burnt coffee and ozone from dozens of overworked computers. Ryuzaki Kaito didn't look like a hero. He looked like a ghost inhabiting a cheap suit. At 29 years old, Kaito was a senior logistics manager for a company that didn't know his middle name, let alone his dreams. His eyes were bloodshot, his fingers cramped from typing, and his heart was currently drumming a frantic, irregular rhythm against his ribs. It was 3:14 a.m., the third night in a row he hadn't seen his apartment. "Just one more report," Kaito whispered to the empty room. "One more, and the quarterly review is finished." But the universe had other plans. As he reached for his cold mug of espresso, a sharp, white-hot blade of pain sliced through his chest. The mug shattered on the floor, the dark liquid spreading like an ink blot. Kaito tried to breathe, but his lungs felt like they were filled with lead. His vision blurred, the spreadsheet on his monitor turning into a smear of incomprehensible data. As his forehead hit the mahogany desk, his last thought wasn't about his family or his unfulfilled passions. "I hope someone saves that file." Then, there was only darkness, a silence so profound it felt heavy. "Wake up, little worker bee. Your shift is finally over." Kaito's eyes snapped open, if he even had eyes anymore. He wasn't in the office. He was floating in a sea of shifting starlight, a nebula of violet and gold swirling beneath his feet. Standing before him was a woman who radiated a light so intense it made his soul ache. Her hair was a waterfall of silver, and her eyes held the depth of ancient galaxies. "I am Ethelgard, the goddess of infinite starlight," she said, her voice echoing like a choir. "And you, Ryuzaki Kaito, have the most pathetic cause of death I have seen in 3 centuries. Overwork? Truly? You weren't even a soldier or a martyr. You died for a profit margin." Kaito felt a sting of shame, but it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of relief. "So, I'm dead? No more reports? No more Monday morning meetings?" Ethelgard chuckled, a sound like glass bells. "No more meetings. However, the balance of the universe is a finicky thing. You worked so hard, gave so much of your life force to a world that gave you nothing back, that the scales have tipped heavily in your favor. You are owed a massive debt of vitality. I am here to reincarnate you into the world of Elysium Zion, a realm of swords, monsters, and mana veins." "Can I just sleep for 100 years? Kaito asked tiredly. "I'll do you one better," the goddess smiled mischievously. "Since you were so efficient with your time in your past life, I shall grant you an efficiency of soul. I will bypass the standard limitations of mortal mana. While others must chant for years to light a candle, you shall possess the absolute origin circuit. Every element, every forbidden spell, every grain of magic in the atmosphere will obey you as if you were its king." Before Kaito could protest or ask for a simple farm life, Ethelgard waved her hand. The starlight rushed toward him, pouring into his chest where the pain had been. It wasn't painful this time, it was exhilarating. He felt his spirit expanding, vibrating with a frequency that felt like it could shatter the stars. "Go, Ryuzaki Kaito," she commanded. "In the world of Elysium Zion, you are no longer a slave.
You are the Archmage of the End. Try not to blow up the planet on your first day. A blinding flash swallowed him whole, and the sensation of falling took over. When Kaido regained consciousness, the first thing he smelled wasn't stale coffee, but the scent of damp earth, blooming jasmine, and something sharp, like the air before a thunderstorm. He opened his eyes to see a canopy of giant, glowing silver trees. The leaves hummed with a faint, melodic vibration. He sat up, noticing his hands. They weren't the pale, shaky hands of an office worker anymore. They were tanned, strong, and calloused in a way that suggested power rather than exhaustion. He looked into a nearby puddle and saw a face that was his, yet perfected. His dark hair was now shot through with a single streak of silver, and his eyes were no longer brown. They were a piercing, glowing violet. "Elysium Zion?" he muttered. Just then, he heard a low growl. Emerging from the ferns was a shadow stalker wolf, a creature the size of a carriage with fur made of literal smoke and teeth that shimmered like obsidian. In this world, a shadow stalker was a rank B disaster, enough to wipe out a small village. Kaido panicked. His instinct was to look for a fire extinguisher or call security. "Hey, stay back!" he shouted, throwing his hand out instinctively. He didn't chant. He didn't focus his mind. He simply felt a slight tug in his solar plexus. In an instant, the atmosphere turned heavy. The ground beneath the wolf cracked as a pillar of pure, white, incinerating light erupted from the earth. There was no explosion, no scream, just a silent erasure of existence. When the light faded, the wolf was gone. In its place was a crater 30 feet deep, the edges turned into molten glass. Kaido stared at his hand, horrified. "I just wanted it to move away. I didn't want to nuke the forest." He realized then that Aethelgard hadn't been exaggerating. His mana wasn't just high, it was broken. Every breath he took seemed to draw in more energy from the surrounding world. He could feel the flow of water in the distant hills, the growth of the grass, the very rotation of the planet. It was overwhelming. It was God tier. "Right," Kaido said, taking a deep breath and trying to calm his racing heart. "New rule. No sudden movements. No shouting. I came here for a peaceful life, and I am going to get it. I've had enough stress for 10 lifetimes." He began to walk through the silver woods, intending to find a quiet place to build a hut and perhaps nap for a decade. But as he walked, he noticed something strange. The mana in the air was reacting to his presence. Flowers bloomed as he passed. Dry streams suddenly bubbled with fresh water. He was a walking miracle, and in a world where power meant everything, a miracle was the loudest signal one could send. Far off in the distance, the spires of a great city reached toward the clouds. In the High Council of Mages, crystal balls began to shatter. Oracles fell to their knees, clutching their heads as they felt a surge of power so immense it felt like a new sun had been born within their borders. Kaito, unaware of the chaos he was already causing, kicked a small stone out of his path. The stone hit a tree, and the tree instantly transformed into solid gold. "Oh, come on," Kaito groaned, burying his face in his hands. "I'm going to have to work to hide this, aren't I? This is just overtime with extra steps." But as the sun began to set over the breathtaking horizon of his new home, Kaito felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. For the first time, he wasn't looking at a clock, waiting for the day to end. He was looking at a world that was his to command. Stay tuned as Story Panel Channel continues this epic journey. In the next chapter, Kaito encounters his first human, a fallen noblewoman who thinks he's a legendary deity. And he realizes that keeping a low profile is going to be the hardest job he's ever had. Chapter 8. The Reluctant Savior.
Kaito hadn't even finished his first afternoon nap when the silence of the whispering woods was shattered by the rhythmic clanking of steel and the desperate gasps of someone running for their life. He groaned, rolling over on the soft moss.
In his past life, a noise like that meant a server had crashed or a manager was stomping toward his desk.
Here, it sounded like trouble, and trouble was the one thing Kaito wanted to leave behind in Tokyo.
Peering through a thicket of glowing ferns, Kaito saw her.
A young woman with hair the color of moonlight, wearing tattered white and gold silks that had clearly seen better days.
This was Lyra von Ethelgard, the last scion of a fallen noble house, currently being hunted by a squad of ironclad mercenaries.
"Found you, little bird," the lead mercenary growled, his jagged blade dripping with dark energy.
"The usurper wants your head, but we might keep the rest of you for a while."
Lyra collapsed, her strength spent, clutching a shattered family crest to her chest. She looked up, not with fear, but with a hollow resignation. "Then take it," she whispered. "But know that the heavens will not forget this treason."
Kaito sighed. He really didn't want to get involved. But as he watched the mercenary raise his sword, his god-tier instincts flared.
It wasn't just magic, it was a fundamental rejection of injustice.
Without even standing up, Kaito flicked a finger toward the group. "Gravity well, 10th magnitude," he muttered.
The effect was instantaneous. The mercenaries didn't even have time to scream. A localized sphere of intense gravitational pressure slammed them into the dirt, cratering the ground by several feet. Their armor crunched like soda cans. They weren't dead. Kaito didn't have the stomach for that yet, but they were pinned so firmly that they couldn't even blink. Lyra stared in shock, looking from the flattened soldiers to the unassuming man sitting under a tree in a plain tunic. To her, he didn't look like a traveler. He looked like an ancient spirit taking human form.
Chapter 9. The Misunderstood Deity. Lyra didn't run away. Instead, she dragged herself to her knees and pressed her forehead against the cool earth.
"Oh, great sage of the eternal canopy," she trembled, her voice thick with awe.
"Forgive my intrusion. I did not know this sacred grove was under your protection. I am Lyra of Ethelgard, and I offer my life in exchange for the punishment of these sinners."
Kaito scratched his head, feeling incredibly awkward. Stand up? I'm not a sage, and definitely not of the canopy."
"I'm just... Kaito, I was just trying to sleep."
"A Kaito?" Lyra whispered, her eyes widening. "An ancient name from the stars."
The prophecies spoke of a traveler who would wield the laws of the world like toys. Kaito realized then that his power level was so high that any normal action he took would be interpreted as a divine miracle. He tried to explain he was just an overworked salaryman, but as he spoke, a void behemoth, a monster the size of a skyscraper that usually required an entire army to suppress, emerged from the horizon, drawn by the sudden surge of Kaito's gravity magic. The beast roared, its shadow engulfing the entire forest. Lyra paled, her hope vanishing. A void behemoth. Even the gods feared these. Kaito looked at the monster. It was loud, it was ugly, and it was definitely going to ruin the quiet atmosphere. "Can you be quiet?" Kaito asked, his voice carrying through a sonic cancellation spell. He didn't wait for an answer. He pointed his palm at the sky. Disintegration beam. Low output. A needle-thin line of pure white light shot from his hand. It touched the behemoth's chest, and in a fraction of a second, the massive creature evaporated into sparkling stardust.
No explosion. No gore. Just gone. Kaito turned back to Lyra. "See, I'm just a guy who likes peace and quiet. Now, do you know where I can find a decent pillow in this world?"
Lyra stared at the empty sky where a disaster-level threat had just existed. She didn't see a man. She saw a god who considered the destruction of a behemoth as a mere chore.
Chapter 10. The Foundation of a New Legend. Lyra insisted on leading Kaito to the ruins of her family's ancestral estate, located in a hidden valley. She claimed it was the only place safe from the usurper's spies, but Kaito knew she was just looking for a master to serve. When they arrived, the estate was a heap of blackened stones and overgrown weeds. "It was beautiful once," Lyra said sadly, "but it would take 1,000 masons a century to fix this." Kaito looked at the wreckage. He thought about his old apartment, small, cramped, and depressing. Then he looked at his hands. He was tired of living in ruins, both literal and metaphorical. "A century? I don't have that kind of time," Kaito said. He closed his eyes and visualized the estate, not as it was, but as it should be. He tapped into the Chronos reversion and mass transmutation tiers of his magic. He slammed his palm into the ground. Waves of golden light rippled across the valley. Bricks flew through the air, mending themselves in mid-flight. Burnt wood turned back into polished oak. Gardens bloomed in a heartbeat, and the stagnant fountain began to roar with crystal-clear water. Within 60 seconds, a majestic white marble palace stood before them, shimmering under the sun. "There," Kaito said, wiping a bead of sweat that wasn't even there. "That's better. You can stay here, Lyra. Just don't tell anyone about the magic thing, okay? Let's just say it was a very fast renovation team." Lyra fell to her knees again, but this time there was a smile on her face. She realized that Kaito wasn't just a savior, he was a creator. And while Kaito thought he was finally achieving a life of laziness, he had inadvertently built the capital of a new empire. As Kaito walked into his new home, heading straight for the largest bedroom to finally get that uninterrupted nap, he looked back at the horizon. For the first time in his life, both of them, he wasn't afraid of Monday morning. He was the master of his own destiny, and his work was finally, truly over. And so, Kaito's life of overwork ended not with a whimper, but with the birth of a legend. From the cold cubicles of Tokyo to the marble halls of a magical sanctuary, he has proven that when you have the power of a god, the best thing you can do is absolutely nothing at all. But with a fallen noblewoman by his side and a world full of monsters and mysteries, how long can Kaito truly stay hidden? The journey of the god-tier slacker has only just begun. If you want to see Kaito accidentally conquer the rest of the continent while trying to find the perfect tea leaf, you know what to do. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to Story Panel channel right now. We bring you the most epic tales of reincarnation, overpowered heroes, and breathtaking adventures every single week. Turn on those notifications so you never miss a chapter of Kaito's journey. What would you do if you woke up with god-tier magic? Would you save the world, or would you build a palace and take a nap? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story, right here on Story Panel channel. Stay legendary.